you're here, you guys make games because you love making games. It's also a way to make some money, right? And that's what we're here to talk about, is how to better monetize, your games. And it's a big business now, right? Last year, $40 billion, half of the video game market is, I think it was actually, equal to total movie box office for us. So already a big business. My company is Scientific Revenue. We do dynamic pricing for our purchases, so we help to make big bigger. What we're doing, we have machine learning technology. It allows us in real time match the right price, the right time with the right player in order to maximize revenue. But now, before, so this topic is not about dynamic pricing, but really, before you can even worry about what's the right price, you have a game that works. And that's the topic here, designing your mobile game for optimal IAP. It's hard, right? It takes deep insights into player behavior, consumer psychology, virtual economy tuning, UI, UX. So we're really fortunate to have a group of experts here, all game owners, with a great experience to share with you. So I'll let you guys all introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about your company and maybe some games you worked on. Jefferson?
Hi everyone, my name is Jefferson. As Ted mentioned, specifically on the IAP side, I started working. My first free-to-play game was in 2009, so I've kind of seen a few during the Facebook days. So I've kind of seen a little bit of how things evolved over time. Most of my career I worked on mobile games since 2005, basically. So yeah, a lot of experience in mobile free-to-plays. I've seen a lot of things going over time, including premium, and then moving to ads and free-to-play and subscription, different ways to do this. But today I work for Bandai Namco, which is a Japanese publisher. I guess our most relevant game would be Dragon Ball Dokkan Battle, which has been on #1 for a few days this year. Yep.
Hello, I'm Paul Brownlow, and Chief Product Officer at Blastworks. We own the social casino brand and actually real money gaming brand Slingo, which is a combination of slots and bingo. It's a fantastic 20-year-old property that we've been now brought into a social casino. And we also have a real money gaming arm over in the UK with Gaming Realms. Previously, I was general manager for mobile over at Double Down, where we launched a very basic HTML5 game with 3 guys and took it up to top grossing in the iTunes store. A lot of hooting and hollering when that happened, when we knocked off Clash of Clans and Candy Crush for at least a few hours. So before that, also have a pretty extensive background in performance marketing with Avenue A at Quantive, which we and DoubleClick kind of crushed the early days of the internet advertising.
Cool. Hi, I'm Josh Campbell. I'm a game director at Backflip Studios in Boulder, Colorado. I'm currently the game director on Dragonvale. Before that, I did a lot of publishing, particularly Hasbro Brands, which owns our company. I did Transformers Earth Wars, My Little Pony, a lot of stuff like that. Previously of Activision and NG Moko, which I know some of you are out there, so hi, Alan. Yeah, that's about it.
And how did you start in games?
How did I start in games?
Yeah.
Sort of a weird story. I won't elaborate the point, but I was a grad student in music and would go on Craigslist every day and look up side jobs for musicians, and found an ad for a music-based MMO, which was a total fabrication. It wasn't music-based and it wasn't an MMO. It was a virtual world for teenagers, basically. And I started as a kind of graveyard shift moderator, where I would, someone would say something filthy to someone else, and I'd ban them for 2 hours, and then, wish I was asleep. So yeah, and from there, design, QA, all kinds of jobs.
Cool. And I loved your story about guitar here, but it's the first question. I want just sort of maybe some examples, for the audience. So I guess starting first with you, Josh, kind of work down is give the audience 2 to 3 games that you think were just designed very, very well for IAP monetization, and maybe some insights into why.
Sure, yeah. There's a lot of really interesting stuff going on. I'll give you 2. One you've probably heard of, and the other maybe a little more obscure, but I think is really interesting. Okay. I play a ton of Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. EA. I just can't help myself. I mean, I love Star Wars. I think the brand is a huge part of it. Brand is something I have a lot of experience with, and I mean, just the value that brings to game development is kind of amazing. From an IAP side, I think that game is just tuned incredibly well. I mean, it has 6 different currencies in it, and somehow that makes sense, and that works, and like, there's always a reason for me to come back to it. There's regular content updates, there's really good targeted bundles. I just think it's a very well-executed game that I wish I could stop playing, but I can't, and won't. And another game I think is actually, I'll just bring this up because I think it's really interesting what they're doing. Egg Inc., it's by Oxbrain. I think that's how you say the studio name. It's a clicker game. It's very well presented, but they do something that I find really interesting that I'm kind of looking at. I don't know if I'm bringing it to my game or not, but they basically have this piggy bank mechanic where as you kind of do actions in the game, every once in a while it will kind of plunk away this little token in your piggy bank, and that will just accumulate over time, and at any point the player can elect to drop things like $5 or something to kind of cash out the piggy bank. And that's something I've never seen before. I have no idea how well it monetizes, but things like that are really the kind of stuff that draw my attention. I think is really compelling.
All right. Paul, a couple games you think of that were particular?
Yeah, this is. I mean, some of this is just not rocket science. It's just to me, it's just kind of standard, kind of blocking, attacking, retail execution. And even though they're now mature, I like what King has done in Candy Crush, because what they've done, again, like Josh said in the other games, they've tuned things very well. And they give offers at the right time, give you the sense that you are very close to completing, and they're going to present you exactly what you need to be able to level up at the right time, right? So and they make it so that you're not hunting around in the store for anything. They do a very good job of merchandising and selling outside of the store, which is key. It happens in Safeway and Target very well too. The other model, I do like the piggy bank, and I've seen that in a couple other games. I think that's pretty fabulous. But when I look a lot in our social casino category, and I really like what Huge Games is doing, where they've taken a mechanic that wouldn't necessarily think could apply to social casino, the clans type, clans type mechanic, and applied that to social casino, and it builds this combination of competition within your own community plus against other players, and that drives monetization as well. I think the great innovation there is taking something that you would not expect in a casino game and making it work there.
Okay, Jefferson.
Yeah, if I was gonna there's 2 things I really like about. I think you got to do well to be successful in the space. And one of them is like the theming, make sure that the game actually fits like what you're trying to do and things like that. So Design Home, which just came out, is a good example of doing that. I love they do this real world stuff. So people feel immediately very connected. What's going on? Everybody knows what the thing's about. So that makes the whole kind of mechanical part of it so much easier later. And then the second thing is like just being efficient, like with trying to be concise and not have 15 currencies and things like that. And Clash of Clans is still to me like an amazing. Mm-hmm. The original version of the game had like such a tight loop, like it was like almost no assets. It was like a tiny game, but still it was like so rich that like it generated all that obviously made their company and things like that. So it's amazing how like if you do something really really well, even if it's like very small, meaning like you don't have to have a 100-person team working on it or anything like that, you can still get like amazing results from it.
Cool. So conversely, sort of flipping it around, tell us just one game, but what would you give me an example of a game that maybe that you thought was great, you really liked the game, or maybe it was just should have liked the game, or brand, however you want to take it, that just did not work, for monetization. Any insights you might have related to that? Ms. Jefferson will work down.
I'll pass for now. Okay. I'm thinking.
Go ahead. I was big fan. Still, I'm a big fan of Jetpack Joyride. Love that. Love that game. Endless Winter. Jetpack Joyride. Yep. Play that religiously, and there were a bunch of us that actually doubled down and played that quite a bit, and probably more than we should have. But very early learned how to farm currency, and it was a very clear way to bootstrap yourself and be able to then harvest massive amounts of coins, and then just build on yourself and keep buying all the most valuable items in the store and never have to monetize. I mean, I still, have balances of millions of coins and never had any kind of real incentive to be able to play because I, earned enough. And so I think that the balance on that wasn't quite good enough. I mean, fantastic game, but very, very easy not to monetize.
Okay, I'll go now. Like if I probably the big missed opportunity I remember, like from at the time when I was looking at it, I was like, oh my god, this is such a big missed opportunity. Was the original Angry Birds. Oh. I mean, that game got to like tens of millions of DAU. Like everyone was playing it, and yet they made like $1 like per lifetime per person. Like it was like such a wasted opportunity. I mean, people play that game a lot. Like I remember, maybe 2009 or 10. Like I lived in London at the time. Like Subway, everyone was playing Angry Birds. Like it was like I got a big craze, but they never got like any real money from it.
Yeah, I mean, I've fallen down that trap personally as a developer. Like where it's just you don't apply enough pressure to the user, and that kind of sounds bad, right? But I mean, I think friction is kind of compelling too. Like if the game's too easy, if there's nothing kind of pushing against you. I mean, in this situation, the game doesn't monetize and it doesn't engage players, and we tune it to be a little bit harder, and both sides will go up. So I think that's a really interesting example. I kind of hate bringing my example up of a game because this is with the utmost respect. I apologize, but Mario Run with Nintendo. I love Mario. I love Nintendo. I thought the game was really well done, but they tried something very new and kind of strange with their monetization. And I mean, the proof is kind of in the numbers, and I hope they nail it because they're an amazing company. But for those of you who don't know, it's basically you can kind of get a taste of all the different parts of the game, and then it's like $10 to unlock the rest of it. And it just there wasn't enough there for me. I mean, I paid the $10 because I had to see what happened, but not a lot of people did. So that's my example.
Okay. Picking on Mario. Okay.
Yeah, I know, it was really dumb. I'm sorry.
Well, actually, so maybe picking up on that a little bit is so what's it mean? So how do you take a free-to-play mobile game that extending from PC? So I'm kind of curious on how that. Jeferson, Bandai Namco, of course, has huge roots in terms of PC and desktop. Any thoughts in terms of how extending a free-to-play PC to mobile?
We actually are publishing a game right now, which is a cross-platform mobile PC free-to-play game. Also has like a console. Yeah, so I think there are models that work. Again, it's all about having the loop that works and have like enough stuff that people can do for like months and months and months, right? Like those are kind of like some of the key things, because the traditional game, when people play a game and they're done in 20, 40 hours, whatever, and like that doesn't do well for free to play. Like one of the first things I learned is like you gotta design a game without an ending. And like that was like super different from like what we had done before, because like it was always like, okay, this is how the game's gonna end, and then at some points like, nope, no ending, please. Like, gotta keep going. So yeah, these are, I think, big mindset changes that you got to do. But yeah, I mean, the platform, people on PC are a little bit more invested, because they have, like they need to sit down and put time on the thing. So it's a little different. You can get away with certain things on a PC that you can't on mobile, but it's not that different, like, to make it work.
Oh. And Paul, you mentioned that Slingo is around 20 years, right? So on PC, so I think you led that effort to take it to mobile, right? And
yeah.
Do you agree with Jeferson? Do you have anything to add to what Jeferson said?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is just a change of mindset. There, when on PC and even early mobile games were premium games, and so and also the model to be able to monetize was you get a free version and then you pay more and you actually get the real game, you get more of the game. And I think what works is just the model we use a lot is just being able to use the monetization actually just enhances the full experience is available to everybody. The monetization then enhances the gameplay, right? You can extend, you can go longer, you can can get, in our game, you can buy, you get a set number of spins, and you get additional spins if you pay or use your currency, and you get bigger wins and all the fun stuff too. But there's, if you never monetize, you can still have a great experience. It just becomes a better game, and I think that players learn that, and then it's a matter of tuning to where they can enjoy that experience, and just also thinking about that. The release and design cycles used to be on this kind of calendar based, and I've got a release a year every 6 months or whatever, something like that, and big features. Where now players expected that, but now I think it's more about time, how they spend their time and their entertainment dollars. We're competing against movies and music and those kinds of budgets. Previous company, we used to run focus groups monthly with the one-way glass, and I can't tell you the number of times where they said, I'm playing this game, I'm happy to spend $20 this week because I'm not going to a movie, and I'm going to spend it on a game instead. And so if you start thinking about your game in that mindset, then that you're selling an entertainment experience for a period of time, then I think that kind of changes the way you present the monetization opportunities.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you make, because I think that's how a lot of the younger consumers look at it too. It's just like, because we came from an era where we used to pay for this thing to get it wholesale, then a lot of people feel like they're being dirty by doing this stuff, but really, the market speaks for itself, right? So people just do it because that's, they prefer to do that than to invest the $60 or, to buy an Xbox or whatever. They just want to have the quick thing, and, they're out, and that's fine. They don't want this save games on their system. They just want to be able to play the thing online and then get out and come back later. It's a different mindset than what it used to be.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good point. I don't have near as much experience as you guys with that. I worked in AAA for a little bit, but you burn it on a disc and it's basically done. At least it used to be that way. It's not really anymore, right? Because it's interesting to see, mobile starts and take some learnings from console and then kind of develops into its own thing, and now that feedback loop is going back the other way, where it's now you have to have a post-launch content plan, and you have to have DLC and all this stuff, which used to not necessarily be the case. But now it's, you ship the game and you're just started. You have just begun. Dragon Veil, we do 6 or 7 content pushes a week. There's always something coming, and that's really crucial, right? Because since anyone can come in, the experience needs to be so tight and polished from the very beginning, right? A console game, you buy it and okay, the tutorial sucks, but you're still going to keep playing it because you already gave them $60, and fine, bump in the road, whatever, keep moving. Our games, you do that and they're done and the player's gone. So just really looking at every little moment in the game is crucial.
Thank you. So new question. So do's and don'ts. So so you're this may hopefully something in the tips kind of category. I'm curious, starting first with you, Josh, and coming back, give us an idea of your do's and don'ts as far as designing for, with an eye towards monetization.
Yeah, I think one really crucial point is to respect your player. I think, people deserve credit, and you should treat them like they are intelligent. Another point, just kind of elaborate that a little bit. It's not only respect your player, but kind of know your player as well. I've worked on combat battlers that are, mid to hardcore, and now I work on a very casual, very gentle kind of game. And the way that those monetize are very different. The way that IAPs approach is very different. In a game like Transformers Earth Wars, it's very competitive. Players are driven to crush each other, and that's how they monetize, right? It's people pay to get advantages to be able to crush their enemies. Dragon Veil, it's, people want to collect the dragons, and they want to experience the sort of tranquility of being inside of the game. So our monetization is much less kind of in your face and much less direct. And both work, so I just kind of sum that up. I'd just say, respect your player and kind of know who they are and know kind of what experience they're going for, and present your IAP to them in ways that match that.
Okay. Paul, just know your player. Good.
Yeah. Excuse me. I think that's a very good point. I think also just there's a lot of basics that just to pay attention to. And it goes in the same theme. Get a player into the game as fast as humanly possible, right? So, and we've done studies about this where you probably get if it takes 30 seconds to get into a game, you're going to get half as many players as you get coming in at 15 seconds. And the curves are pretty clear on that, right? And if it takes longer to load than that. So it may not be sexy and really a lot of fun, and kind of super whizzy to go off and work on some of those optimizations, but you will see it on the back end on monetization because you're going to retain players a lot better. The other thing is also don't rely, don't rely on people going to the store to buy things. Try and do merchandising outside of where, out of sales, out of the store. It doesn't mean you don't have your good store design, but the way I think about the store is like walking down the aisles of my supermarket, right? I know what I need to get. I know I'm going down to bread, and the wheat bread is up on the third shelf, right? Now, what happens at that, in that retail is that they put the fresh strawberries when you walk in the door, or the nuts and the chocolate along with the ice cream, and you end up buying everything together and making it very easy for to make that buying decision. Do the same thing in your game, right? Give something, you establish your base value in the store, but merchandise and put more value in outside of the store and make it very easy for people to buy.
I'll do a little bit of an extension of the Know Your Player one, which is, I work with a lot of licensed content. A lot of the games I've made were had some IP on it, and you gotta know how to use those things, right? And I think so really understand what the IP or what the brand is all about, and then deliver that, right? Like, even though you want to make money and you want to do other things, like you want the game to be fun, like you also got to deliver on the brand promise, right? So, quick example on Dragon Ball, like we're kind of thinking like, what's the kids in the playground experience, like what when they're role playing in their mind, like the last episode or whatever, what do they do? And we're like, okay, we'd like to release like a Kamehameha, which is like one of the fireball attacks or whatever. Like, so okay, so the game needs to do this within the first 30 seconds. And if you check out the game, like that's exactly what happens. Like you start a game and then suddenly you're already like doing the thing that is the whole point that you wanted to be part of that universe to do that, right? So we give you that very quickly. It's very easy, because we're all like fans of content and like some of these brands and stuff, it's very easy to try to innovate on that and say, I'll give like another example. It's more on the premium side, but I think still applicable. For a long time, all the Star Wars games were about like ships, right? So there's like, X-Wing, TIE Fighter, whatever, like, and then at some point, like they really got far away from what the core of the game used to be. And I work at BioWare, and BioWare, like one of the earliest BioWare successes was Knights of the Old Republic. When, the first thing they said is like, you will be a Jedi. That's why everybody loves Star Wars. Like you're just gonna play a Jedi, and it sounds simple, but a lot of people like ignore that like basic part of like why you get excited about Star Wars. And if you miss that, then you can be good at the design and monetization or whatever, but you will not get the most out of what you have.
Yeah, okay. I'm glad you brought Dragon Ball, because that was my other question, was how working with branded IP, or IP can change. Does that inform? Josh, you mentioned you work in Transformers, right? So, but you also Dragon Ball, right? So, is it when you're working with a brand, how does it sort of change your design decisions?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's a little bit different, right? So Dragon Veil is kind of our original IP, whereas Transformers is older than I am and prolific. And, we've been very fortunate in that Hasbro is, they're really, like, people think of them as a toy company, but they're really a brand company, and they excel at this. And so for Transformers specifically, I have to give them a ton of credit for that, because they have some really amazing people there who really know the brand and are really super nerdy about Transformers and will keep you in check. And so that's been a big part of it. And to kind of elaborate on that a little bit, on the CPI side, it's like half of what you would see otherwise with Transformers. So it's truly amazing. So if you can get a good brand, do it, because it's great. But there's just a lot that goes into kind of being true to that brand and the spirit of it. And it's not just, like what does Optimus Prime look like, but, how would he behave in this situation, and what kind of a weapon would he hold, and what does his voice sound like? We got the original voice actors for that, and so those guys came in and kind of imbued a lot of character in it. So there's a ton that goes into that,
yeah. Just to extend on that a little bit, I think it's really key that to make the brand effective, it's not just slapping the brand on. I've had examples where we had even with Blasters, we had a deal with Pitbull, right? And and another partner were doing this, and all we did is had Pitbull's picks in this casino, and really didn't move anything because the idea was, oh, we're going to go get all these Pitbull fans that are good demographic for us, and they'll play. And what it missed on was being able to really kind of get attached to what those fans of Pitbull really like to do, right? So on the other side of and so there was nothing about his music, there was nothing about his persona, his character. It was just a picture of him, and that doesn't really have a lot of value. On the other side, on our real money side, we've deal with Deal or No Deal and X Factor, and taking elements of those brands, having a Slingo game designed around Deal or No Deal, where you're choosing also boxes or briefcases exactly like you would on Deal or No Deal show. So, and that's been very, very effective. So again, taking those key brand elements and exposing those to the users, because that's in their mind, that's what the brand means to them. The brand isn't just the logo.
Yeah, I mean the other thing that really changes when you work with a license is that you're also working with a licensor. So there's like somebody who like trying to make sure you don't screw them up and all those things, right? So sometimes it doesn't really affect your process, but sometimes it really does. Another quick example, when I worked on the Simpsons Tapped Out, which is like amazing game, doing super well at the time, but like there's a lot of like really basic things we couldn't do because Gracie, the company who kind of like we worked with, they had some tenets. One of them is like every player's experience is the same, so we couldn't do A/B testing, we couldn't do custom offers, we couldn't do any of those things. So like the game had to be exactly the same for everyone. And this is like obviously it kind of handcuffs you like on some of the things you can do. So you can't use all the tools in your toolbox basically. And so but obviously it's very different. Like many licensors don't care about this; they more care about visuals. Or I also worked in Harry Potter, and like J.K. Rowling only cared about the text. Like she did not care about the game. She did not care but she wanted to make sure like all the menu titles were like done right. Why do you call this about? What does this mean? I'm like, okay, change it to something else. Like each licensor has their own like angle to it, and you gotta do your work around those things.
Yep. So clearly a lot of approvals of the brand, but then Josh's point, of course, easier to acquire customers, right? When you have a brand behind it. So clearly, brand will influence design considerations.
Yeah, it's not just. I mean, a lot of people talk about this as like, oh yeah, brand helps your CPI, but like another thing I really learned super early when I was working on the Facebook version of FIFA, it was a free-to-play game. The passion for the brand also helps with your monetization, because like we were making like this game, you created your clubhouse and then you pick your players and then you go play other people, and then at some point we said like what will happen if we let people play with the stadium from their club instead of their like custom stadium. So we added like the Arsenal, the Emirates Stadium, which is like one of the big clubs in England. We made the stadium and put it out. We sold it for like $60, and like people ate it up. Like it was the most expensive in-app purchase we had at the time, and they loved it. So and again, it didn't necessarily help us get more players into the game. It just made like the Arsenal fans like really happy with the game.
So all right. So yeah. So brand will influence your design decisions. How about genre? Are these?
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that, maybe.
I mean, I have an experience to share with that. I mean, I think passion for the brand is super important. Like you get a level of engagement that you wouldn't otherwise. Like not to bring Galaxy of Heroes up a lot. My team hates it. I do it all the time. But if it wasn't Star Wars, I probably wouldn't play it. I probably wouldn't have got to this point in the game. Like I'm very, very late into it, and I'm excited because it's R2-D2, not because it's a robot with these abilities. I mean, that's part of it. It's kind of a double-edged sword too. Like what we saw with Transformers is, like for the combat builders, like you have an unbranded one. The people who are going to go play that are people who, like your theme, but like those kind of games, and that's what they're kind of seeking out. What we found with Transformers is it's just such a big brand that's so far-reaching with so many people that we got just a ton of people in, and our day one was just crap in the beginning. Because you get people who get in because of the brand and then are like, oh, it's one of these games, or I had never seen anything like this, and maybe don't have the level of kind of experience and skill or whatever that kind of comes with that. So, we had to kind of change the experience a little bit to kind of be a little more generic, I guess, for Transformers fans. And like other games, you can kind of assume things that like, oh, people understand how these work, so we don't need to tutorialize this particular bit. That's not necessarily true when you have a brand, because you get all these kind of newbies to the genre.
Okay. Cool. What about, so, we talked about a little bit about how designing a game, kind of, thoughts, to-dos to building a game. What about when you have a game that's, it's live, right? You think it's actually a good game, you still believe in the game. I'm curious for anyone's thoughts on this, like where you led a change, of monetization design from, wasn't working, right? So if it was not working, but then maybe you took it over from someone else, or what you're doing. So curious for anyone's thoughts, on that sort of topic.
Well, I'll just say that first, that's like incredibly hard to do. It's not impossible, but like it's incredibly hard. I tried many times, and I can't say I was successful like many of them. Maybe it's a little bit of cheating. I mean, the biggest like change I've ever seen was not necessarily fixing a broken game, but like making a game that was already good, like really good, and that's at least here. So Dragon Ball is another example. Like if you go and check the revenue charts for Dragon Ball in the US, like the game's out almost 2 years, and it was fine. I mean, it was like maybe top 70, or like it wasn't like the game that is today. And a lot of that was we working with the Japan team the game's done in Japan by a Japanese developer, and we're working with them to understand that, the way you do events in the US is a little different, the way the characters that people care about here are not quite the same, and then the minute we started like doing these optimizations, and things even like download size, store presence, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Japanese marketing, but it's usually like shout, like 8 fonts, like blink. It's probably the only place that still uses Blink in the world. And they were like, and so a lot of things they were not like. It's a little not in a purchase, but games are a complete experience. So like how people find out about it matters, and the event design, how early people hear about the event. Like in Japan, they just do it. Like in here, you really got to drum it up. Like you tell people ahead of time, and then remind them when it gets closer. So yeah, like this is probably the biggest impact we've done, because we were able to turn a game that were like an old game. It was out for like a year and change, from position 70 to like number 1. Like it wasn't overnight either. It was like one event, and we learned, and then we adjusted, tightened a little better, and then eventually like we hit it, and we're like, okay, this feels good.
Cool. Any other thoughts about redesign that maybe you led?
Yeah, I can. This is actually quite topical for me. So I've been on Dragonville for about 6 months. The game's been around for almost 6 years, which for a mobile game is astounding. And again, 6 months can't take really any credit there. Though we have made some changes that are leading us to, I think we're going to grow in revenue this year, which hasn't happened for a long time, which is great. So there's a couple things I can point to there. And one of the things that we kind of changed recently is, the kind of wrap up is, make Dragonville feel different every week, and kind of like events that you guys are talking about are so critical. So we have a lot of tools where we can do that on the back end that we just weren't really utilizing. And these are things like, highlighting special kind of dragons and bringing them back, or spawning little treasure boxes in their park for just that day, or just always something new, always something different, like some reason to kind of come back on top of the normal experience that people have been having for 6 years. And that's been very successful, both from an engagement standpoint, user feedback standpoint, and from a monetization standpoint, because the other thing we've done is, we've paired all of these with targeted sales that kind of highlight that particular feature that we're doing that week. One of the big benefits of Dragonvale is that we have 6 years of content. Like there's 370-something dragons at this point, and a lot more coming, and more coming out every week. So really kind of utilizing that and retheming the game has been huge for us.
Good. No, yeah, and congratulations. Yeah, 6-year-old game to
thanks.
You have some of your best months in years. So that's very cool. Taking on the same thread. Actually, I was going to ask you, but you're like a mind reader. I was going to ask you that kind of question. But is any other thoughts on how you take a game that's maybe been out for a while and keep it fresh, maintaining it, particularly on the monetization side of things?
I think like one of the best ways to do that actually is to replace the team that's working on it, and get people who weren't there in the first 5.5 years. And right, I think that's I work a lot with different studios, internal and external, and there's definitely a little like bump of excitement when a new team gets on it, because the previous team maybe felt like they've done it all, and they're used to that kind of treadmill, and but when suddenly new team comes over, then they really question everything, and sometimes they misunderstand how the thing works and change something, and then that actually turns into a good thing. So there's yeah, one recommendation would do if you want to change a game, like sometimes you got to change the team.
I think that's a really good point, because I mean, we had kind of similar experience where we launched a game, Slingo Blast, which is great head-to-head, a competition game, a little bit kind of like trivia, kind of trivia crack where it's turn-based, and a bunch of power-ups to be able to go off and try and get mega scores and get better and better at that. But we launched the game, and there wasn't, and the original team had not really thought about. They made assumptions about monetization, that everybody will understand and use power-ups, and that they will use some of these other what they saw as key monetizing points in the game, which is we measured relentlessly as soon as we launched, and that was not the case. So I had to go back and kind of look at this again, and we also changed the team and looking at places where we could build friction into the game by charging for round starts and things like that, being able to put some gating in. But really, and it's a point that Jeferson makes, I think, is really good, in that getting kind of fresh eyes and because sometimes your lead designer on it might have a very strong opinion about why he did certain things, but then looking and it's sometimes hard to change that opinion. I also rely on the data, measure relentlessly to figure out what's really going on and where the opportunities are.
So what and connected to all that is, so what metrics are most important to you in terms of figuring out if you're on the right track, or if the game's monetizing well for you? What kind of, particularly as it relates maybe to design?
Daily revenue.
Daily revenue?
That is a big one.
Nailed it. Yeah, check it. Didn't you? That you get benefit going first. You got daily revenue. Anyone else?
Well, then also what your costs are against that.
Sorry?
Also what your costs are against that.
Yeah.
Right? If you're paying $4 to get $3 users, that's not, you can get all the revenue you want, but it's not going to make you money.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, obviously, it's a weird answer, but like the metric I really love is what we call like I don't know, I don't even know. It's like the conversion, like the player conversion into the game. So we always track for every game we have, like the moment that where we know we got the player. So like, okay, this guy's gonna stay in the game, like. And we try to obviously bring that as early as possible all the time. Like we always, like that's one of the things we always care about is like, okay, when do we know like the person's in? Is it after the 5th battle, or is it after the level 7 or whatever? But like we really try to understand that as much as possible for every game we have. It kind of helps us drive the experience in the beginning of the game.
Look at that. Look at where people convert. For us, it's on days in the game, because it's in a casino tends to be a lot more time based than level based. So that's very important, and measuring that. D0 is very important to us, and looking at it helps us determine the quality level of the traffic that we're getting. And looking at that daily, you can see if you're getting good traffic sources, or if there's something not working in the game. We launch new titles every 2 to 4 weeks. Go into this casino, and that can fluctuate, and need to be able to react quickly on that. Also, looking at the player monetization rates. I'm really a fan of looking at the average transaction size and the average spend per day. Also on longer term as well. It's retention based, but with those also can tell you are you getting the right player mix? Are people moving up to become bigger spenders and whales? And is your merchandising working to be able to get them to spend more, per day or at a time? I think those are really key, and they all feed back obviously into kind of more consumable metrics like ARPDAU and total revenue. But yeah, it's a good starting point. I mean, we look at tons of metrics every day.
Yeah, no, us too. Data is obviously crucial. The only thing I'll add to that is we have a lot of metrics around our content specifically, like just trying out, how long is that content in the store, what kind of people are spending on it, so we can just really kind of drill down and understand, like, this dragon is successful for this reason, so we can replicate that. And so really kind of, putting telemetry around your content and really understanding why things are successful is also really important.
Oh, good. Yeah, well, I mean, for us, we need to evaluate games, because we're doing machine learning. We need to evaluate whether or not it'll work or not. So Jefferson nailed it with daily revenue. But But also, of course, conversion, is important too. But another thing we look at is repeat purchase rate, right? And we were thinking, actually, I'm always surprised a lot of times when we talk to a developer that actually don't know what the repeat purchase rate too. So we always think that's, you need to know what people coming back. So, to purchase that.
I think that is key. And also, a lot of times for a proxy for that, we just look at monthly active payer rates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. But rewarded video. And how does that, so, we're talking about IAP monetization, but, lots of people who've done very well with rewarded video. How does that fit in with your design considerations if you have an IAP? Is there inherent conflict, or do they work together?
I think it works. It depends on the type of game, but like if it's more like a core or mid-core or whatever kind of experience, I think it fits better because that kind of audience is more happy with advertising if it's like opt-in, like they go and engage with it rather than like it being on their face. So yeah, generally we use rewarded video more for like the more core experiences, and the casual games we do other stuff. But yeah, that's kind of like how it has worked for me.
So in Social Casino, I'm a real fan of rewarded video. I had a lot of success with it. It's kind of interesting. I have kind of the A/B testing myself in my experience. What we found is that it's non-intrusive. It helps engage players longer. It's kind of and we've added rewarded video for players to get more currency. And it has not affected our IAP at all. Negatively. I mean, the IAP that I'm seeing is the same as before we had rewarded video, and getting on Google Play is now over 20% of my revenue, and over on iOS it's over 10%. So that, to me, that's just blended at 15%, found money, right? Pretty easy. And previously, like I said, it was another social casino, and there was a lot of resistance to adding rewarded video because they thought it would take away from the player experience, and additionally, in my category, being able to show other casino ads is a great way to monetize, and proven that it doesn't reduce IAP. The concern would be that you're bleeding off your players over to other casinos. You got to realize that that every player, every slots player, every social casino player, on average, and I think it was Eilers or Super Data that has this number. It has between 5 and 6 casino apps on it. So it's kind of ridiculous to think that you're going to be the only player, the only casino on there. Just be one of them. Unless if you have 5 titles, maybe you want to move them and get really good at cross promoting between there, but realize that people will go play other casinos. You want them to play other casinos. You want them to stay in a category and come back to you, and you can and it's very monetizable.
Good. Let me pause here now. I don't have commences, opportunity. I have some more questions, but we could, put it to the audience and see if anyone has any questions that they would like to ask one or all panelists. Alan, please.
It looks like a very organic question.
It is actually. So Ted and Josh, I promised them I would ask the hardest question I could think of during this panel, but I actually can't think of it. So instead, I have the funnest question I can think of. So there is data to suggest that players are willing to spend large amounts of money on games, right? Obviously, you can see 30, 60, 90-day LTVs in top-grossing games that are over $1,000. You have Kickstarter campaigns where highest price tiers are $5,000, $10,000. So that one-time transaction above X amount of dollars is there, and the data suggests that it's there. So in Apple and Google, there is a price tier for $999. If you were mandated in your companies to try to figure out how to get players to press the $999 button in your game, what would that gameplay system or feature be, and why haven't you done it yet?
Okay, good. I still don't know my favorite color, so I'm glad you didn't go with the hard question. So
I think yesterday you told me that I can answer any question with like, well, every developer is different, and you really got to figure out what works for you. So I'm just going to give you that answer because honestly, I think it's a good question. I really don't know exactly how to provide that level of value. I mean, I think that actually is kind of specific to the type of game. I mean, something like Game of War can probably pull that off. Something like Dragon Veil, that might be a little more difficult. I don't know. Do you guys have ideas there?
I think it's game category. Casino games, it's fairly easy. I mean, I think the challenge I have there then is I've seen this is some of these runaway whales. It's great if they're spending $1,000 once, but in our category, we can see multiple of those purchases, which is fantastic for our revenue line. But on the other hand, don't want people to get into positions where they're not really capable of paying that, because the game mechanic really affords people to do those repeat kind of purchases. We've seen it at our top tier. People will spend multiple times a day at the top tier, and I think for us, it's not all we would have to do is just enable that SKU for those cohorts, but there's a lot of responsibility that comes along with that too.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is there are games where people spend large amount of money anyway. Like so for those games, it's kind of easy to solve. We just got to give them like even better value. And we bought a startup when I was at EA, and they had this Facebook game. Like the high spender, this is like in 2012 or 11. Like the high spender had spent over $200,000 in the game, and so we actually did transactions with them outside of the game, because they basically would call us and say like, hey, I want this thing, wire the money, and we just like put the thing in his system, because so we had like it was completely custom because he was such a big spender, and we just did like some of those things. So yeah, this tiers are great for that, because the guy does not want to click on the $100 button 10 times, right? He just wants the $1,000 button, because he knows he's going to get the value from it. So yeah, for those games it's easy. For the other games it's a little bit trickier. I'll think about it.
Yeah. Kind of to that point, I've noticed that there's been a decline in players kind of designing the game, meaning player feedback, making determinations as to what the next content release or future content releases might make, especially in the larger titles. You don't really have kind of a player feedback loop in the game itself. Do you find that there's any real IAP benefit over time to having players more involved? Because of course most of the time they're going to be lower tier players, because that's the majority of the audience. But I wonder why that mechanic kind of has disappeared, whereas help us make the game better is more an offline process now as opposed to integrated into the game. And is there a revenue reason for that?
I don't know. I think a lot of people listen to feedback. Yeah, I don't know, like how, I know the Star Wars guys, and like they keep this list of like the most requested characters, like by the community, like in their design room. So they kind of are listening all the time. It might not be obvious to the players, which maybe is a missed opportunity on their side, but like they definitely pay a ton of attention to what people want. And yeah, it pays off, because obviously, if they can kind of brag later and say like, hey, you guys asked for it, here it is. I definitely have done that in games in the past, so it's definitely useful to do it. I don't know why there is the feeling.
I mean, the thing I can think of is just that by having it in the game like that, the volume. I mean, when you have hundreds of thousands of DAO, and you get even think about what the percentage of players are that will come in and give that feedback. It's a lot to go through, and it's a lot. It's actually, I think it's more of a data management issue than anything else. I mean, we love hearing back from our players, and we go back and we get focus groups and look at all the reviews and solicit feedback when we're in surveys and things like this. But like you said, it's all out of the game, and I think for us it's about managing that data.
We have two more. Unless you have something burning to add, so we have two more questions. Okay.
Yeah. So, the mobile industry right now mobile games at least is pretty crowded compared to, let's say, 5 years ago. I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts on, in 5 years' time from now, where you guys kind of see the mobile game space be at. I know that, more recently, I guess AR gaming has become more of a thing with Pokemon Go proving that concept works, but curious to know, like, what you guys are excited about maybe in 5 years' time from now, and what the game scene kind of looks like there.
Yeah, I mean, I really wish I knew the answer to that question. I mean, probably you guys too, I imagine. I mean, I think it's like AR is super important. That's really interesting. VR is something that's kind of coming to mobile. Everyone's very excited about it. I mean, personally, I think it hasn't really kind of proven itself out yet. I think it's amazing technology that's very expensive and has strange experiences on it. For me, as the devices just get more and more and more powerful, I mean, there's just so much that can come with that, right? Like console kind of power and production value is kind of, mobile is getting there. And so I think we're going to continue to see that trend come. And the gaming experience is going to get richer and richer. The teams are going to get bigger and bigger. Budgets will get bigger and bigger. But I think, IAP is here to stay too. So it'll be interesting to me to see how that kind of develops over the next 5 years as the experiences get more robust.
I am with Tropicana Entertainment, and we are in the social casino space. Tropicana obviously has kind of a dual objective in having a social casino. One is revenues through in-app purchase and advertising, but the other is really brand engagement. And I know that you guys always kind of talk about sort of the constellation of app strategy, cross-marketing, 6 years being an incredibly long shelf life for a mobile game. Companies that are coming into this space like Tropicana, who are looking for that brand play, obviously they're looking to have an app that is going to have a very long shelf life. They don't want to kind of dilute that brand relationship by having a multitude of apps. They're much less likely to have their own in-house game development studio. They're typically partnering with third parties, so they need to find some efficiencies. What advice would you have for organizations in that kind of situation in terms of how to preserve the revenue flow, maintain the engagement of the game, given that context?
It's funny you say that. Yeah, 10 years ago, every mobile game had like a more games button, and cross promotion was like huge. Like it's really not anymore. Like if you go look into like the top 25 and see how many games have like links to other games in them. I mean, other than advertising, I guess. But it's really, and personally for us, like we're making less and less games every year. And like it's not about having 100 games. It's about having a small amount of really meaningful games. Yeah, so I think there's a bit more of a moving away from that just like shotgun model and going more into like these things that can last a long time, and I think that's definitely the way to go. I think.
Well, part of that is it costs a lot, especially in the social casino space. It costs a lot to be able to acquire users, especially if you're paying for them. And so, being able to have other channels to that is so. And I'm a real fan of having a container where you just pump a bunch of content in. Right, players in the category love to have new content regularly, right? And helping them, if you kind of build that kind of contract with them that you're going to be giving them content, they'll stick around. And especially with you having land-based properties, making that you're talking directly to those kinds of players. I mean, like I said, with us with Slingo, and even when we had it at IGT with Double Down, is that having players recognize when they see the games that they see on the floor, and they love to have them in their hand too, right? So, and that was very, very powerful. And I think that if you focus on that, being able to just keep that content flowing, and then put your brand experience around that, because you have fans of Tropicana, right? And that's why they come to you. And kind of going back to that brand discussion that we had earlier. So those are the elements that I would consider.
So guys, everybody as a designer, we talk about content treadmill, but now I'm seeing a lot of sale treadmills. What are your thoughts on sales and sort of burning out customers with that kind of model, the always on sale stuff?
Yeah, I would discourage and I'll just call Clash of Clans back. That game worked without events, without sales. So I think if you can get a game to work like that, then the events and the sales are great tools that you can use to maximize. Yeah, but doing sales basically you're training people to wait for the sale, right? So I guess you have a little bit more control if you need money at the end of the quarter or whatever. But it's really not a good way of, in my opinion anyway, to deal with the audience. It's much better to not have sales, or if you're gonna have them, make them meaningful and not that often and unpredictable. In other games we had weekly sales, and what that basically did is nobody would spend any other day of the week because they knew they're all saving their money for that day, and so, which I guess is good and bad. But yeah, I would urge you to try to make something work without those things first, and obviously if you got to get to them, then you get to them. But
yeah, I think it's a lever to pull later in the life cycle, right? I mean, I think irregularity is a huge part of it, and also segmentation, right? It's like, while we have a lot of sales going on, it's like not everyone is seeing every one of those sales, and the last thing you want to do is train people to wait for it. But we found, there's a balance to be had there as well.
I agree, and I'd also say that what I found to be successful is focus on adding value. So don't change your pricing, because otherwise what you do is you train people to go pay less, right? So if you have a $10 SKU, don't put it on, don't have a 50% off sale and put it at $5. Go if you want to have that kind of value proposition, throw twice as much stuff in there and keep it at $10. And because otherwise you're training people just to buy down, and then you're forced to have sales.
Yeah. I think we're out of time. So closing thought is sales can work, but you do need to learn, if you can segment your players and deliver targeted pricing and sales, then you'll be most effective in order to convert some players into payers. But that's it. Thank you very much. I guess we'll hang around afterwards.